Hi, thank you for joining us for Exploring JoCo. This is a Silver Clover's visit to Mahaffey. And in this program, our goal really is to bring the Johnson County locations to you from home. So we have Tim Talbot here. If you could, he works here at Mahaffey, and he'll give you a little details about this location. So Tim.
Well, welcome everyone. Come on in.
Thank you. So are you guys open today?
Yes, we are. And since I'll keep my distance here. I'll take my mask off. Yes, we are. We are open pretty much year-round. This time of the year, it is now visit the Heritage Center here, view the exhibits, walk the grounds, visit the animals, read the interpretive signs. On weekends, we have one person in the house. We're not doing the living history program at this time, except December 5th. If you come for our Christmas open house on December 5th, we will have the stagecoaches operating and the farmhouse. We'll be cooking on the stove. There'll be all sorts of, our living history program.
That sounds like fun. And we're here at the main building, is that correct?
This is the Heritage Center, and a lot of us that work here still, in our minds, it's still the new building. Well, it's 10 years old now, 11 years old. This building completely redefined how we operate. It let us do a much more active and better living history program on the historic grounds. The Heritage Center has our exhibits, and we can walk through those. Has our exhibits and a couple orientation videos. It is also, and you can see the large room over here on my right, a rental facility. We do lots of rentals as well. So after we close at 4 o'clock, the building is available then for rentals.
Wonderful. So what's the significance of Mahaffey here in Johnson County?
The Mahaffeys were among the early settlers that came to Johnson County. As the story goes, Mr. Mahaffey and a group of family, relatives, friends from Logansport, Indiana, which is where they were at prior to moving here, came out in 1857, scouted the area. They didn't pick Olathe quite yet, but they knew this is where they wanted to move. And so that fall, they moved from Logansport to Johnson County. And after looking the places over and thinking through their options, they settled on Olathe. Should we go into the exhibits?
That sounds like fun. Let's do it. And I see they're wearing masks here. Your statues?
Yes, Beatty and Lucinda are properly attired for COVID. Want to make sure they're up to date. Well, the exhibit, and I wouldn't pretend to take you through here and read every label or detail to you, but just to give you an idea of how the exhibit flows. We tell the stories of the Mahaffeys, of agriculture, of Olathe.
And what time range do you focus on here?
We really focus on the late 1850s, from the time of their arrival, to the early 1880s, just when Beatty and Lucinda sold the farmhouse, sold the farm, and moved into town and retired, which, not unlike farmers today, in that era, don't think about people getting the luxury of a full retirement. But they did retire, they sold the farm, moved into Olathe, and lived another 20 years in retirement. And Mr. Mahaffey had all kinds of enterprises. He was an officer of the court at times. He had been a county commissioner. In retirement, he continued to speculate in land and deal in land. His oldest son, William, was involved in that with him. So he had plenty of plenty of things to keep him busy. He was very active in the Grange. He was one of the first members of the Grange, he and William, and Mrs. Mahaffey, because the Grange in its day, pretty unique. Unlike other organizations that had a women's auxiliary, the Grange, which was a fraternal order devoted to the interests of farmers, the Grange welcomed women directly into the membership. They did not have to be in their own auxiliary. And in fact, so many officers of each chapter were supposed to be women, so many were men, and so many were voted on and could be either. So Lucinda was part of this as well.
Fantastic.
So Olathe, we tell the story about a little bit of what's going on in Olathe. Santa Fe Trail.
And when you say stagecoach stop, what exactly is a stagecoach stop?
It is, when we talk to the kids, we use the comparison. It's not the same idea as a truck stop. So what do you do at a truck stop? Stop and get gas, eat, take a break. Well, a stagecoach stop, you don't put gas in the stagecoaches, but you change horses. You have fresh horses ready to go. We don't have the Barlow and Sanderson business records. I wish we did. It'd tell us a lot more. But it's been estimated there could have been 100 horses kept here. So
oh, wow.
If you've got 4 horses on each coach at least, and you want them to have a day or two break before they go again, it doesn't take too long to need a fair number of horses. And the stagecoaching operation then is also part of what we talk about. They weren't just a stagecoach stop. They all kinds of travelers used the Mahaffey home here. There are a number of folks in the county histories who will say, well, I spent my first night in Olathe at the Mahaffey place. As far as the stagecoaches were concerned, because of our proximity to Westport, Kansas City, we think we were mainly a restaurant, but there are people who talk about staying here overnight when they first came to town. So, and Mr. Mahaffey used that position to great advantage, as did many. This was a common pattern where they came from in Indiana, Illinois, Ohio. A farmer who's got a home in a convenient, good spot will operate their home as a wayside inn and tavern, a stagecoach stop. And so they were doing what they were certainly accustomed or knew about. And it put Mr. Mahaffey in the position of being in, there's all kinds of people crossing paths and coming to town and leaving town. And so for an entrepreneur, businessman, it was a smart business.
There's a lot of history here then.
There is. Mm-hmm. There is. That's our stagecoach. This was taken almost 12 years ago. So our road system now in place on the grounds lets us really do a lot with the stagecoaching. We have more horses. We only had a pair. The front pair's photoshopped in, so at that time. But now we have many more horses.
All right. Should we make our way to our next stop?
Sure.
So what is our next stop here today?
This is our Oregon and California Trail, Section 2. All kinds of people went by here. It wasn't just Santa Fe. The road out front is the Santa Fe Trail, but people traveling to other locations used it as well. The Lone Elm Campground out south of town, all the different routes came together, and then you went to Gardner, and on the other side of Gardner was the split. Olathe Historical Society has a gallery.
And are the items here on display originals?
They are originals to the era.
Mm-hmm.
We have Mrs. Mahaffey's china, a few pieces. We have their family Bibles in storage. We have a chair. We have a table in the farmhouse that was Lucinda's. Mainly, the artifacts are telling the stories. They are all originals from the time, but they didn't belong. Most of these things did not belong to the Mahaffeys.
But it tells a little bit about the era.
Yes, yes, these are all original items. Well, we can head for the farm.
Enjoy the outdoors a little bit, right?
Yes.
So is the farm is it the original building? What has been done to it?
The farm, the core of the farm is the farmhouse that was built in 1865. We have one barn that was a Mahaffey building, and the ice house next to the farmhouse. Those three were original buildings. The other buildings, a few of the other buildings date from the time that the time after the Mahaffeys, when it remained a farm, and a lot of the smaller, the animal sheds, garden shed are reconstructions based on original buildings, but they're so we can be a farm and carry out the other functions that we have to.
Because this place is considered a living history museum. Is that correct?
It is. During the Living History program runs weekends in April and May, and then Wednesday through Saturday, once we get past Memorial Day. And that continues through Labor Day, when we go back to Saturdays.
And right now it's on hold.
And right now as I said when we started, right now, yes, we're open, but other than some special events and programs, it's come and visit the grounds. We do have on the weekend, on Saturday, there is someone in the farmhouse, but they're not engaged in you'll meet someone in period clothing, but it's not they're not engaged in cooking on the cook stove or doing those sort of things.
Can you share a little bit more about the orchard here?
Yes, the orchard is one of our newest additions. The Mahaffeys had an orchard. We see in the illustration in the 1874 Johnson County plat book that there was some orchard on this location. Most of their orchard, though, was several acres, and it was to the north of us here. So we have wanted to start up an orchard for a long time, and a couple years back we got started with it. So these are apples, cherries, peaches, all varieties that we know were grown in Kansas. We find references in Kansas to these varieties, or they are certainly from the area. But most are able to we're able to show where they were grown, varieties that were grown in Kansas. In fact, there's one apple tree over here that was developed by a gentleman in Leavenworth in 1866. So this is our second year, and we're pretty pleased.
I feel like I see a fruit right there.
Yes. It's trying.
Yeah, it's growing, right? It takes time.
Yes, we were. Again, we're really pleased with how well everything seems to have taken off. This will be another facility that's available for rental, but we did not build this to be first a rental. This is a proper orchard, but we do have an open space in the center where we can put chairs. We will have a few little features or structures in here, but very simple, very small.
Do we have any questions through Facebook Live that we might be? All right.
We're headed up to the farmhouse. these original buildings, the farmhouse, the ice house, the barn frame, this is their original location. These were not moved in. This is, you are on the Mahaffey farm, which was 320 some acres eventually, and one of the most affluent in Johnson County at the time. And Mr. Mahaffey, or Beatty, didn't lose ground to other people, but there were more people started moving here that caught up with him. So in 1870, this is still among the relatively affluent farms.
And I remember jumping onto a stagecoach here at one point.
We do. When we have school groups, we load the stagecoach out front here, and we call it the front loop. And on open to the public regular operating days, we use the side yard over here, because that's where the stagecoaches pulled up originally. And we have one account of that. It's kind of tragic for the person involved, but there is, in October of 1866, a Olathe newspaper mention of the stagecoach driver who was run over as the coach was leaving the side yard of Mahaffey's Tavern last week, has since died. Internal injuries, there wasn't much they could do for him at that time. But it does speak to this arrangement where you came off the Santa Fe Trail, which is Kansas City Road today, is the Santa Fe Trail, and pull up here and pull in to the home.
There you go. And I'm going to actually take a second to go ahead and introduce my colleague. So we have Molly Maddie here, and she's going to lead the second part of this field trip. Hi everybody, I'm Molly. I'm with the 4-H program at Acre, and I'm going to introduce you guys to Katie Lane. She is a part of Mahaffey Stagecoach. She's dressed in Victorian clothing, ready to show you guys kind of how the daily life of Mahaffey is. Welcome! Come on down! And 1 second, let's go ahead and strap you with the mic.
You might be in period clothing, but we need modern technology.
Okay. Okay. There we go. Does that work?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Awesome. All right. All right. Let's go down into Mr. and Mrs. Mahaffey's home. This is the same set of staircase that the Mahaffey family used, and also the stagecoach passengers. As a stagecoach stop, one of the main services the family provided was meals to people who are traveling on the trail, and also people who are just sick of camping and wanted something nice to eat for supper. So Mrs. Mahaffey invited her guests in through the cellar, which is this way. Most people who come into this room notice, first of all, how dark it is. And I like to remind our guests that we have very different expectations for what light is required, right? As long as I can cut my carrots and not chop my finger off, it's probably light enough for a 19th century family. I did light some of our kerosene lamps today, just to give it a homey feel. Our table is set for 10, but Mrs. Mahaffey had 15 people in her household. She's cooking for them as well as all those stagecoach passengers. As a farm family, they've got access to lots of fresh ingredients, a pretty varied diet compared to what some folks were eating in the 1860s. Our table is set in a 19th century fashion, so we've got our blue willowware. As we've done archaeology here at Mahaffey, we've found bits of ceramic very similar to what you see on the table. We've got some reproduction silverware, and there's even some flowers from Mrs. Mahaffey's garden. We know from her daughter Ella's recollections that Mrs. Mahaffey had marigolds and zinnias and touch-me-nots in her garden. So we grow all of those things as we try to tell the story of the Mahaffeys. Come this way. This is Mrs. Mahaffey's kitchen. We had to do a little rearranging compared to what her kitchen looked like originally. This hole in the wall shows us where her stovepipe originally went. When the city did restoration work in the 1980s, they were forced to put retaining rods through our floors, which means we can't use any of the fireplaces here. But we are lucky enough to have this awesome, probably 1850s stove, which lets it smoke out through the window. And we frequently demonstrate 19th century foodways activities for our guests in this space. This is an awesome stove, 6 burners, a really large firebox. If I want to boil a pot of water, I can pull off a stove lid and set my pot directly into the stove so that it'll boil more quickly. And this oven, I could probably bake 4 loaves of bread in there at the same time. It's a beautiful piece. Mrs. Mahaffey probably grew up cooking on a fireplace, so a stove like this is just one of the technological changes that's happening in that 19th century time period. One of the things we like to talk about during the fall on the farm is food preservation and how we're preserving food for the winter. And this is a great example of technology. It's a mason jar, right? Invented 1858, as the patent says. And although the canning technology is different than what we use today, people aren't really understanding hot water baths yet. This is a wonderful way to preserve, in this case, some green beans. They are in a brine, which is made with water and salt, that is strong enough to float an egg. So with all of that salt, my beans should be okay until, I don't know, maybe January. We'll pull some out and soak them in water to pull out the extra salt before maybe putting them into a soup or a stew. This time of year, we're also preserving with some old sorts of technology. So mason jars are brand new, but people are preserving things in crocks covered by pig bladders and covered by brandied papers. People have done this for hundreds of years. So in this particular crock, pickles, I put the bladder on when it's nice and wet and stretchy. And as it dries, it creates a really nice tight seal. This has got a layer of paper that was soaked in brandy directly on top of my jam. And then this piece of paper was soaked in egg white. And as it dries, it shrunk and created a really nice seal. But not everything needs to be preserved. Things like squashes and pumpkin are going to be great in a root cellar in a cool area without additional help. This is a summer scallop squash. It's one of the heirloom vegetables that we grow in our garden. These were being grown by native peoples at least in the 1600s, likely for generations before that. This is the sort of squash Mrs. Mahaffey might have had in her garden. Underneath my table, I've got boxes full of potatoes. Again, potatoes are one of those vegetables that we can just store in a little bit of sand in a cool space, and they will be good to eat for many months. Our red Weathersfield onions were also grown in our garden here at Mahaffey. This is an awesome keeper. These onions will last at least 12 months. And this was a really common variety in the 19th century. So again, something Mrs. Mahaffey was probably really familiar with. So this is our dining room and our kitchen, and if you're a Stagecoach passenger, you probably never see beyond this part of the house. If you think about it, if you're starting a restaurant in your basement, you probably don't want random people walking through your living room, right? So the family used this staircase to access the upstairs, while those Stagecoach passengers kept heading right out the cellar and on their way wherever they were headed. We are going to use a modern staircase to access the rest of the farmhouse. It's right over here. We had to put in this wall. The fire department did not like our lack of handrails and the head clearance and everything else. This wall gives you an idea. The room is actually another 5 feet wide. You've got a lot of room for a second table or maybe even some storage in this space. All right, and here we are in the family areas of the farmhouse. Mr. and Mrs. Mahaffey had 8 children, but they also lived here with a lot of hired helpers. One of my favorite references to the Mahaffey's parlor, which is the room that you're looking at now, is the Mahaffey's servant girl, who is named Elizabeth Smith, was married in there. And we know that because it says so in the Olathe newspaper, the Olathe Mirror in the 1870s. It certainly makes you wonder about the relationship between this hired helper, Liz, and the rest of the family, if she was allowed to get married in their parlor. We also know that Elizabeth Smith named her first child Effie, and Effie is the name of the Mahaffey sister who was living here at the same time as Liz. So we've always wondered about that relationship. While the parlor was probably reserved for special occasions, this sitting room is where daily life happened for the family. Mr. Mahaffey has a desk there where he might do some of his business work. In addition to having the stagecoach stop, he's also on the board of the railroad. He's a member of the Grange and a variety of other organizations. Above our fireplace, we have some photographs, early photographs of his parents. Unfortunately, Jane Beatty and Andrew Mahaffey never got to see this home in Olathe, but without a doubt, the Mahaffeys would have remembered them regularly. In the 1860s, it's totally unfair. Men can go to the store and buy the clothes they need, whereas women and children are forced to make their own at home. We have got a beautiful 1860s Singer sewing machine here. This is one of the first machines that's widely available in the 19th century. If you're a seamstress, you'll appreciate the bobbin inside of my machine. It's called a boat shuttle. And as I use my foot or as I use the wheel to turn it, you can see the bobbin is sliding back and forth in the machine. And that is what my needle thread catches to do my sewing. This is a pretty neat piece of Industrial Revolution technology. And again, Mrs. Mahaffey having 8 children, not being able to buy women's clothes in a store most times, without a doubt she was doing a lot of sewing. And we know she was a knitter. Her daughter Ella tells us that when her hands weren't doing anything else, she was always knitting. It's a lot of socks, I suspect, for her family as well. We also have this cute little melodeon here in the family's sitting room. We know that the youngest Mahaffey daughter, Ella, knew how to play the piano because when her parents celebrated their anniversary in the 1890s, she entertained everyone with her piano skills. Not quite a piano, but certainly a nice compact instrument like this most certainly might have been in the Mahaffey's home. I've got a little piece of 19th century music. I suspect you'll recognize it. There we have it. Stephen Foster, popular in the 1860s and still known today. You noticed I pumped my foot, which pushed air through the keys to make the music. So in that way, this instrument is more like an organ than a piano, which has strings. Let's go upstairs and visit the Mahaffey family bedrooms. We'll come right this way. If you're one for architecture, you might notice this staircase does not fit the rest of the house. The Mahaffey home has seen lots of renovations. In about 1900, the Stiley family got rid of the second half of this room, turned the staircase, and added this very elegant one that we have today. In that process, the Mahaffeys probably lost a 4th bedroom that was here. We think the original family staircase kind of ran through the middle of this entryway, 2 bedrooms on that side, 2 bedrooms on that side. Very symmetrical and very common for this style of house in the 1860s. So with our 3 bedrooms up here, we assume that one of them must have been for the Mahaffey sons who have left their toys everywhere. I'm glad it's not just a modern problem. John, Frank, and George were all living here in the 1860s, and it is certainly cozy. We've got very different ideas about personal space today. You can imagine 2 of the boys might have been in the bed, the other one in the big bed, the other boy on the small trundle bed. We have an account that says the boys, when it was hot, would actually sleep out on the porch. And as they slept, they could hear the traders and the bullwhackers going up and down the trail, herding their cows and swearing in Spanish. So it's a very multicultural experience, sleeping on the porch. All right, this is Grandma and Effie's room. Effie is the Mahaffey's second daughter. By 1865, Isabel, the first daughter, is married and having her own children. She lives locally, so without a doubt, she frequently came to visit. But in terms of living in the home, maybe this was Grandma and Effie's bedroom, or perhaps it was Effie and hired helper's Liz's bedroom, and maybe Grandma had her own. It's hard to say. If you ever find the Mahaffey's journal, diary, photograph from the 1860s in an antique store, we'd love to have it. There's so much missing information. We just have to do the best we can, putting the clues that we have together to tell this story. Mr. and Mrs. Mahaffey's bedroom. My favorite piece in this room is actually the quilt on Mrs. Mahaffey's bed. We have in our possession a quilt that is said to have been sewn by Mrs. Mahaffey herself. And in the 1990s, one of our wonderful volunteers made an exact copy of that quilt so that we could display it, leaving the original in our secure collections facility where we can preserve it for future generations. You can see it has sunflowers stitched into the quilting design. I think you've seen pretty much everything in the Mahaffey home. We'll go back downstairs and give you an opportunity to check out the grounds and also meet with our farrier in the barn. See what's happening out there. We'll take you out the front. We'll be official. What a beautiful Kansas day.
Ooh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Katie, for taking us through the Mahaffey house.
Yeah.
And thank you, everybody. We're going to head over to the Farrier next.
Yes,
so
the barn.
Awesome. Have a good day.
Yeah, you as well.
Great. Okay. So, we are going to be heading over this way. Through here. Alright. We got the sheep hanging out. And this is a cool day at Mahaffey because we've got the farrier here that's taking care of the horses. So you're going to get a little inside treat of kind of the work in the backyard of what they do at Mahaffey behind the scenes. So we'll see if they're ready for us and check that out. welcome to the barn. All right. Let's see, are you guys ready for us? Sure. Yeah? Okay. I'm going to hand it over. What you want to do. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Jessica, and I don't know if you need the mic.
Yeah, so what we're going to do here, if one of you guys would be willing to take on the mic for some introductions, but we have Kathy Adams with Mahaffey, and then we have Randy and...
I'm Kim.
Kim is
one of our drivers.
So one of the drivers. So Mahaffey has a little bit of outside help to help wrangle their creatures here, and I'm going to help get Kathy outfitted with a microphone, and she and our team here are going to give us a little bit of an introduction to all things livestock, because we've got to make sure the animals are taken care of, and that's what they do.
Welcome everyone to the barn. This is Lady. Our shoer today, also known as a farrier, back in the day also known as a blacksmith. Farriers and blacksmiths are a little different today than they used to be. Used to be kind of all one and the same. Now blacksmiths do a little more just of the tool making of things, and farriers focus more on the horse's hooves themselves. Lady came in a little gimpy this morning, so what we're doing right now is trying to figure out why.
So our farriers get to serve as also a bit of a hoof doctor. So
yep,
and orthopedic specialist in today.
Given that all Randy does every day, 8 days a week, is feet, I always start with my farrier before I start with the vet, because A, he knows the horses, he knows their feet, and he can see the little sub things that might be wrong. And unfortunately right now, since I'm one-handed, I can't.
Yep.
So if you want to proceed.
We'll let him proceed. Can you share, how was he walking when he came in? How did you know that his foot wasn't doing well?
First thing I saw is she was standing with her foot out in front, and she was just standing on her toe, not on her whole foot. When we saw her walk, it was like, oh, it hurts. Whoop, 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 whoop. And she's a little skeptical of the process. Oh, sweetie. There's a girl. My guess is, being a draft horse, she was probably, all of her shoeing and trimming was done in stocks, which means you're put into a confined area, your foot is actually pulled up by pulleys and levers. I'm not sure that she was done freestanding until she came to Mahaffey. So if you compare her to the way Ace is behaving, Ace has probably always had his feet done just loose. And you can see the difference in how relaxed Ace is versus her skepticism.
All right, and who do we have working on Ace over here?
Oh, Randy, I'm so sorry, I've lost your partner's name again. Tom.
Tom was quietly working. We didn't see when we came in, so it's a whole team to take care of a team of horses.
It takes a village. So, and as far as trimming, we don't tend to put shoes on any of our horses. We have nice surfaces that they work on. Good girl. What we are doing is making sure that there's not too much growth somewhere, and that all of the angles of their hoof matches the angles of their body. Because if you have anything in your foot that doesn't work, it affects the whole rest of your body.
How frequent do they get their hooves trimmed?
Every 8 weeks. We keep them on a schedule so that we don't get things out of whack. And then I know every 8 weeks on a Monday at 10:30 or 1:30, depending on their schedule, I will see these two gentlemen. And we are really lucky. There are some horseshoers that if you call and say, I need an appointment, they'll say, I'll be on there Wednesday. Whoop, 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 whoop. But they don't say which Wednesday, and they don't necessarily say what time zone. These guys are awesome. They're always here exactly when they say they're going to be.
So what all do these draft horses do here at Mahaffey today
All?
versus maybe what they would have done for the Mahaffey family?
For the Mahaffey family, they would not have been using the draft horses for the stagecoach. We're kind of splitting the difference in using drafts for both stagecoach and farming. The draft horses here would have been used for all of the plowing, harrowing, all of the planting, harvesting, pretty much anything that needed horsepower. And yes, horsepower actually comes from these guys. It's the amount of energy needed to lift 1 pound. I can't remember if it's, what is it, 1 ton, 1 foot in 1 minute? Something like that. My physics is not all that great. Pick it up, sweetie. You're fine. Good girl. Foot. Good girl. So sometimes they can fool you. Fool.
To reward that.
If you think it's a front foot, it may actually be the opposite back foot that hurts. I am 80% confident it's her front foot that's not feeling good, but we'll find that out shortly. Foot. Good girl. Foot. There's a girl. And anytime you're dealing with horses and you need to restrain them, less is more. The more you try and force them, the more upset they get. That's why we don't have her tied. She can move around if she needs to. She just needs to trust. Good girl. You're all right.
How heavy are these draft horses?
She probably weighs 1,600 to 1,800 pounds. Ace is our biggest horse, and he's an easy 1,800. So your typical quarter horse, 1,200 to 1,500 pounds.
So Tim was sharing with us earlier in the museum that there may have been upwards of around 100 or so horses held here. What kind of work goes into caring for a herd of that size? Well, and also for the small herd that you have here today of draft horses.
So it takes a lot of attention to detail. Like with Lady, we saw she was not standing normally in her pen. So even if the shoer wasn't here today, we would have brought her in, checked out why she's not moving like she normally does. So you have to get to know your animals as individuals, not just as a herd of 100. We have moved to round bales so they can eat more like a normal horse who's designed to eat 22 hours a day. They can eat on their round bales all day long. We check their water twice a day. If it's gross, we dump it, refill it. Anytime the hay gets low, it gets refilled. If they're doing extra work, they may need protein vitamin supplements. As you walked around, you've probably seen some funny looking plastic tubs. Those are actually a vitamin, mineral, and protein supplement. Horses are smart. They know what they should and shouldn't eat. So if they're deficient in one area, they will eat more of that than the other. So right now, they're completely ignoring the protein tubs. They're working the salt blocks pretty hard. I'm not quite sure why. But it's noticing all those differences. If I see somebody who is normally one who's got his nose in the hay bale all the time, and I see him for a whole day not touching it, I know something's off. So then it's figuring out what's wrong with that horse. Likewise, daily grooming is important, so you can notice any nicks, cuts, funguses, all those fun things that all livestock get. Our goats last winter either had what we call rain rot, which is a fungus. It also presents the same if they have lice. So without doing scrapings and sending everything to a vet, we just treated it as if they had both. It went away. But it's noticing those little things before they become a big thing that are important. And then the other thing is keeping them fit so that they can do their work. So right now we're kind of in a lull. Typically, each team works at least 2 times a week. Oh, sweetie. Right now, they're kind of getting a little time off, but we will get back into that 2 to 3 times a week, working just so that they're fit and ready to go when school season starts and they have to go to work. Plus, we want them fit enough that they can go do their farming chores without it being hard on their bodies. Just like us, if you don't walk a mile a day, when you go walk that mile, your muscles hurt. We want to keep them fit enough that they can do their jobs.
All right, so we've kind of gotten an in-depth look at Lady and Ace and your other draft horses. What other livestock do you have here at Mahaffey that people can get up close to or be introduced to?
We have 2 oxen. They are both milking shorthorn by breed. They are ginormous by size. This tall, because that's how much I have to stretch to scratch the tops of their backs. They weigh about 3,000 pounds each. They are 15 and a half years old, which is pretty old for a working oxen. Ours have never had to work very hard, so they have kind of a cushy retirement right now. We have 2 goats that are 5 years old. They are actually twins. Their job is to be cute and obnoxious. We do use them to pull a little cart. They can pull wood from the back of the property up to the front. We do use them some. We'll sometimes use the goat cart, not to be confused with a go-kart, for picking up manure around the property. We have 3 resident sheep. Smoothie is 4 this year? No, yeah, and the girls are 5. 5 draft horses, and right now we have 6 chickens. We will have many more chickens in the spring. We had some problems with predators early fall. Wasn't worth getting a new flock, so we will be getting chicks long about April. And then some parts of the year we have pigs, some we don't. Pigs we raise to butcher, which I know is a problem for some people, but our meat comes from animals. We take very good care of them, but we don't name them because then it's too easy to get attached and too hard to say goodbye.
And I know the vast majority of what you have here at the Living History site is true to era or true to the time period. Are the breeds true to time period as well?
All of them are. So the pigs are Berkshires or Berkshire, depending on what part of the country you're from. The horses are all Percherons. As I said, the oxen are milking shorthorn, the sheep are Merino, and the goats are a Spanish goat. Did I forget anyone, Tim? Oh, and our chickens, we have 3 barred rocks, 2 Brahmas, and a golden Polish. Good girl. Yeah, I know.
And I think maybe the last time that I went through, there was some discussion about some of the, we'll get Lady settled here.
Oh, sweetie. Good girl. Sometimes bribery is your friend. We'll call it positive reinforcement today.
Positive reinforcement. We all do well with positive reinforcement. But no, I think I remember the last time that I walked through here, we had a small bit of discussion about some of the modern technology of the time, like the goat treadmill.
Yes.
That you have back over there. And I know Tim before has talked some about the time period that the Mahaffeys lived in. To us might seem very old and outdated, but for their time they were very advanced.
And most of our equipment we have on display. You can go see it. Things like the treadmill, yes, it seems antiquated to us, but how many of our folks go to the gym every week and stand on a treadmill and put in their exercise?
So
well,
for the treadmills we've not advanced far from maybe what the Mahaffeys were using.
Well, and for them, instead of just walking on it to get your steps in for the day, they used it to power something else. So we have a treadmill big enough for a horse to go on that powers our threshing machine, or we have the smaller one that a goat or a big dog could use that would power a washing machine or your butter churn. So they were using animal power. Now a lot of the things that they had then, we use just to keep ourselves fit. And if you look at things like our reaper, which is what we use to harvest the hay, or our wheat, it is a sickle bar mower on the front. There's a deck and then paddles sweep off the wheat on to the ground where we can bundle it. That sickle bar mower is the same technology you will see on today's combine. It's just bigger. But if we break teeth on our sickle bar, we could go to Tractor Supply and have them order teeth that would fit our sickle bar from the 1860s. Some of that technology really hasn't changed at all, which I think is amazing. Now, a lot of those sickle bar mowers that you'll see people pulling tractors, ours is the same, only we use a horse to pull it, and it still works.
So that's, I'd say, probably a really good example of how, I guess, the Mahaffey family was the entrepreneur family of making sure that they were set to be the most efficient and successful in the area.
Right. And the more technology you have, it allows you to produce more, just like our farmers now. They produce way more than any family needs. And all of the production, everybody talks about in Extension, all the farm reports is, what is your production per acre? Well, the better your technology, the better your production. The better you understand how water and the temperatures and the seed you use, the better your production. They were using a spring wheat. We now mostly in Kansas use winter wheat because you don't have as many critters, in quotation marks, that are trying to eat your seed in the spring if it already has a start from the winter. So your production now of your winter wheat is more than we would have gotten with spring wheat.
Do you have any questions coming through on the feed at all?
I have not seen any come through.
And just a note for those who might be joining us live, you are welcome to submit questions via the chat, and we'll do our best to get them answered. But
Hi, sweetness. Oh, over here.
I don't know if our Farrier wanted to share a little bit on what he does on, like, maybe how things have changed or things haven't changed from.
Things haven't changed. Pretty much, very minimal in the over 100 years. I would say in far as working on horses' hooves, may have more different products now than they did back then. Like they would have to make their shoes back then. You couldn't really go out so much and go buy a store-bought shoe. But now you can go buy a shoe that is produced, and you don't have to make it the day when you're working on the horse that very day. Like so far, that's kind of changed a little bit. But as far as the basic working on a horse's foot, it has not changed in hundreds of years. It's pretty much stayed the same. And as far as the concept, trimming, nailing the shoe on, it's all the same.
So the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah.
Very much so true.
Yeah. So pretty much everything kind of stayed the same, or shoeing wise. I mean, it hadn't changed a lot over hundreds of years. Just mainly just production wise of making regularly available, making stuff that way you don't have to make it the day of when you're working on the horse. But and they have a different newer products that, like if you need to have a horse that's sore and you need to put some stuff in there to kind of help make it more comfortable, like these days than they did back then. But it's pretty much all kind of stayed the same.
And if you can believe Wikipedia, which I don't always, Farrier is a term that goes back to the 1300s. It's a term that's been around for a long time. Part of the root is ferrous, which is one of the main components of iron, which is what shoes are made out of. My brain's full of all kinds of geeky nonsense.
All right. So as far as the facilities go for here at Mahaffey, when was this barn built, and does it model the barn that might have been here during the Mahaffey's time period? Or
this was completed in 2014. We do not pretend that it's a historic barn. It was designed to reflect the buildings of the time, but to be of serviceable use to protect all animals and all of our equipment.
So it's the kind of the perfect marriage between keeping true to the historical components and making sure that all of your critters here are well kept after. So.
Yes.
Kind of like what Randy was saying, there's been some advancements on the healthcare side of things and making sure that animals are safe and healthy and happy. So.
Yeah. And as you can see behind you, all of our horses have their own harness that has been specifically adjusted to them. So it's not like I'm trying to wear my big sister's shoes. We have harness that fits each horse, adjusted to fit each horse. It also makes it a lot easier if we have to have 4 horses working all at the same time. But we spend a lot of time paying attention to the individual personalities and quirks, needs, however you want to describe it.
Are there any other last tidbits that you guys would like to share about your work at Mahaffey, or some of your favorite components, or why folks should come and visit you? If you want to come this way, Tim, her microphone should pick you up.
All right. Well, we hope you can get out to visit us soon, because we are a farm, so there's always something new and different going on. Again, the Christmas open house, December 5th, will be a good day to visit. The stagecoaches will be running. And
can people find out more about Christmas open house on your Facebook page?
They will, yes, as it gets closer to time.
Closer to Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And once you have spent all Thanksgiving inside with your family, bring them all out and have a day outside with all of our critters too.
Things do change. So often people think, oh, I've been there. But because we're a farm, because we have animals, because we have a variety of living history activities, things change. So be sure to come out and visit.
Well, with that, we want to thank everyone for joining us for Explore JoCo, and a big thank you to Mahaffey for having us here today.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
She hit it.
Okay. Oh, so if you are interested in other silver plover activities, we do have a Christmas wreath project where you might get a kit and follow our horticulture agent, Dennis Patton, in order to create a wreath for yourself. And we do have a few other projects lined up. For example, pen pal with the 4-H'er, and more to come. And a shooting, what is it?
Jacob's Ladder.
Oh, Jacob's Ladder with Mahaffey as well. So please sign up if you're interested in other silver plover opportunities.